Hello, folks. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Good. It's hot in Boston today.
Is that before or after the Miami Heat came through?
It might be the Miami Heat coming through. It's like 90 degrees Fahrenheit right now, which is a little much for June 1st, but it's okay.
Your cat seems to be enjoying the sunny time.
He is enjoying the sunny time. I actually was I was a little worried I was going to have to ask somebody else to volunteer to facilitate last minute because I actually had to go to the emergency vet last night, but he's doing okay. He seems to be doing okay.
Oh yeah.
So. That was almost
well
that was almost a thing that happened here. So. We'll give everybody another minute or two. Prep to do things though. For everybody's benefit, feel free to add yourself to the attendee list in the agenda. Doc is in the chat. It seems like it's probably close to a quorum to get going. So I'll kick us off. So hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Katz. I'm with Tidelift. I volunteered to be the facilitator for today. At the end of this meeting, we'll ask for somebody to facilitate the next meeting in 2 weeks. So you too can do this if you would like in 2 weeks. I think that if there's anybody who's new, who hasn't joined here before and wants to do an intro, feel free to unmute and do so.
Well, I can present. I'm Pedro, and I'm part of the Ghost Upstream team, along with my other colleagues who are also here on the call. So Joe, Gabrielle, and Joyce. And we've actually taken the liberty of adding some things to the minutes that we'd like to talk to a bit later. So yeah, we're basically a team that we're Google employees, and we work full-time on external contributions. So basically helping other projects improve their supply chain security. And Scorecard is basically the tool that we use to do this. So our work is both trying to improve Scorecard adoption, like the Scorecard action, for example, for repositories, and also simply suggesting supply chain improvements in all the myriad ways that Scorecards suggests. So it's a super important tool for us, and so we'd just like to make a couple of comments a bit later.
Any other new folks? I got you, Josh.
Yep. Oh, thanks, Jeremy. Yep. So I'm Josh Clements. I work on an OSPO at Analog Devices. I was lucky enough to stumble into the OpenSSF Day at Open Source Summit North America this past month. And like, I made the mistake of telling my company that I went, and they're like, cool, go do more of that. I am starting to see some familiar faces since I am doing more of that, but I'm still going to continue to get as much mileage as I can out of that joke. So I'm happy to be here. Specifically, we're looking at implementing scorecard processes at ADI. So I am very interested in what we're going to be talking about here.
Awesome. Any other new faces, names? Just trying to skim here. I don't think so. We have a pretty full agenda, so maybe we'll jump into things. All right, agenda, some announcements. We got some intros, project updates.
Yeah, I threw that on there. I wanted to give an FYI to everybody to check the where the scorecard. People have access to see who has access to scorecard in the other GitHub repos. A lot of people are taken off of admin, which means you can't actually see what the collaborator settings are on the repos. I think scorecard folks added your own admin repo. I had to have an all-star admin team added. So yeah, just an FYI to double check that any GitHub settings and permissions are correct. The right people have access that they should have or shouldn't have. Yeah, that's it for that.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. The scorecard repo, I think, had a team-based approach ahead of time, so I don't think our access changed much, but I will double check.
Yeah, I saw some of that. I don't remember if it was on Slack or email, because they kind of blend together some days for other OpenSSF projects. So good call out. Thanks, Jeff. Next up, code review proportional scoring changes.
Hi, this is me. So the PR that is being referred to is here, but code review changed to leveled scoring last year, and the idea is that instead of having kind of like all or nothing, meaning like any unreviewed commits or pull requests that are merged into main kind of count as much as having like no reviews. That's what leveled scoring meant. We would just kind of go back to proportional scoring, meaning like the number of unreviewed PRs that you have is proportional. Your score is proportional to the inverse of that. So the more reviewed PRs you have, the better your score. And probably the only change now from status quo before that is that there's only activity by like automated activity. We just kind of raise that there's insufficient data to give a scorecard score. So I think mostly there's like maintainer alignment on this, but or like on the general approach, and maybe like a few edge cases need to be figured out. But this will probably be the change that we like. Something like this is what we will arrive at soon after this PR is merged. So I wanted to give that as a heads up and ask if anyone has any comments or thoughts on this.
I mean, I think my opinion I left on the PR in terms of, you know, the revert is good. It's just kind of one of those edge cases you're talking about. So yeah, just needing consensus between you and I, and then Naveen and some of the other maintainers.
I was
guess-
curious, what does inverse mean?
Exactly what you think it means. The more unreviewed PRs you have, the worse your score is.
Yeah, but inverse is not linear. It's not proportional, right? 1/x is not
Oh, no.
Maybe you
no.
mean 1 minus x or something.
Not
10 minus
mathematical
x.
inverse. It's just a logical inverse.
So basically 10 minus some percentage or something like that.
No. It's like the percentage of reviewed out of out of total. Yeah. It's not like you start at 10 and then deduct. Yeah.
I guess one question that comes to my mind, thinking back a few weeks, probably now actually almost a month or two, was there was a recent change which had pretty significant score changes. Has there been any thought on how to sort of see how this is going to impact scores before it's merged? In a broad way?
Yeah, so I'm working on a testing tool that will help sort of run Scorecard against like a known set of repos, and then with a proposed change, rerunning it and then doing a comparison. So that's something I've mentioned probably a month ago at this point. I have a design document that I'm working on and will be bringing towards the meeting when it's ready. It's just not quite there yet.
Cool. Just sort of wanting to avoid the like whiplash. And yeah, time has no meaning. So I was like, I don't remember what it was. I just remember talking about it. Could have been yesterday for all I know. Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Spencer. Anybody else have anything on this? I'll keep this moving. Brian.
Great. Just a quick update. In anticipation of some of our GitLab support getting closer to launching, I wanted to just make sure that the message of what we're providing connects with everyone who might be interested. So I wrote a short doc. I'm getting some feedback first from folks directly involved in the project, and then I'm gonna make sure to share that out with the broader group. I wanted to let everyone know so it doesn't feel like a random document that shows up at some point. And then I also just wanted to say I think that as I started putting this together, it starts opening up the door to the larger conversation of how we want to version different releases. I don't think that's really in scope for this, but I think it's a topic for the future too that I'll be bringing back.
Cool. It's exciting to see GitLab support. I know there are certain communities who very strongly would much rather be on GitLab than GitHub, so it's good to kind of be able to give some insight into them. Sure. Next up is adoption of a contributor ladder.
Yeah, so that is what it sounds like. One thing that like we think that would be pretty good for Scorecards and honestly other OpenSSF projects as well would be having a contributor ladder. So there's already an open issue for that. And so we actually already came up with a quick draft of what we would like to see, I don't know. And it's heavily based on SIG Store's ladder. They have one, so we made some changes on top of it, but something just to check out. And I shared it as a Google Doc just because it's like for this sort of thing, I think it's easier to collaborate. But obviously, if everyone prefers, we can obviously send this over as a PR instead. And the doc is currently written like as a like overall OpenSSF contribution ladder. So it talks a lot about the OpenSSF and sub projects and whatnot. But if preferred, we can also trim this down and make it very scorecard specific as well. That would also work. So this is just like our suggestion, and obviously like any suggestions or improvements are absolutely obviously more than welcome.
So do you intend to take this, I guess, more broadly to the OpenSSF, or is your intent just for the scorecard?
My intent is to get this with whoever wants it. So if there is appetite with the OpenSSF, then we'd be here. Then that'd be great. And if not, if people want to do it ways differently in different projects, then obviously we're all more than happy then to have this specifically in a specific version just for Scorecard as well. That'd be fine as well.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I would suggest somebody, either yourself or somebody here, get it on a future TAC agenda, or go ahead and open an issue in the TAC repo and propose this for a TAC agenda conversation at some point.
Okay, sounds good. Can do.
And I know Jeff has done similar things with All-Star, and I see his hand up. So go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm just taking a look at it now. Yeah, definitely update the title to show that this is a proposed contributor ladder, and not it's kind of representing. I don't know what it's representing as the OpenSSF contributor ladder. I'll make some comments, but one thing I think is good, given that I was just messing with all the GitHub teams, is like be really clear, at least for the one that Scorecard adopts, which level reflects to which team, and what permissions that gives you. I do see that there are some like defined by and privileges here, so that's good. So yeah, be explicit there.
Yeah, great, exactly. I just put the triager roles and like the actual like GitHub setting roles. Yeah, the names kind of map to the GitHub permissions, but yeah, make that like there isn't a team right now that has to map to a team now. So like whoever can make that comment or that suggestion, I'll certainly approve it for sure. And one kind of like general thing I'm getting as I look here, not specific to any line or anything, is, there's three main levels here: community member, triager, maintainer. The triage level doesn't seem to have a lot of meat to it, because without write access to the repo, your approvals of a PR are worthless. I mean, I guess they're a little, the PR writer can care, but they don't actually go towards like the approvals needed to merge a PR. So I think there's should be two levels at write access or write and above. One that's like probably representative of the current maintainers and what you have here. And then a level that has write access and the ability to review and approve PRs, but not necessarily like set the direction of the project or be a core maintainer. So that might be a tweak to do here, is kind of have the community member contributor level as the lower one, the middle one be somebody who works on the project, approves PRs, messes with issues, and then the maintainers is the ones that set the direction. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Just like one question though, and the Scorecard maintainers will obviously be able to answer this better than I could possibly imagine, is how much of a workload is just handling the PRs and handling the issues and answering all the issues? Because the triager role does not have, shall we say, contents right permissions, but they do have issues right permissions, in that they can close or reopen issues, the label issues, they can label PRs, they can close PRs, they can't approve them or merge them, but they can close PRs. So I don't know like how severe, like how useful that would be for the project, shall we say. So they can't like approve, but they can do almost everything else.
Yeah, so like we get a lot of issues and more issues than we can work on. So just triaging in general would help. And a lot of the times when we get external contributions, it makes sense to have a maintainer have the final say. But there's a lot of little stuff like, oh, you edited this README without the underlying YAML that we use to generate it. So like there's a lot of first pass review that would still be beneficial, even if the review couldn't make it all the way through, or like be good enough to be merged. It would still, at least for me, take some cognitive load off. But
Another point that I see is like the triager could be kind of a way to get to be a maintainer. So you by being a triager, you will like get to know a lot of issues, label them, and get a more like knowledge of the repository, and that will like make it easier path to become a maintainer as well. It's kind of in the middle of the way.
Yeah. I mean, I've certainly seen sort of the triage role take a lot of different forms in different open source projects over a long time. In some cases, it certainly is the on-ramp to bigger contributions. In a lot of other cases, there is a large set of folks out in the world who actually just really enjoy doing sort of that triage, sort of that grooming of kind of I always think about Bugzilla grooming for Mozilla back in the day, or GNOME. That there was actually a pretty strong community of folks who were focused purely on just the like triage, get rid of the things that are noise, saying that things are out of scope and some stuff like that, without in some cases even being developers. So like that's actually one of the nice things about a triager role in my experience. But I'm not sure if that's it. And this is sort of, I think, where to Brian's original point, kind of bringing it, if the idea is to try and start at sort of the overall OpenSSF level, starting with the TAC, because they have a little bit more visibility across all projects as opposed to just scorecards.
But yeah, like I mean, obviously, like I'm. This is very much a draft. Please make whatever changes you want. I saw in the comments Keith Ganger, don't know how to pronounce that. Sorry. Said something about like trusted reviewer, and that is also a bit like in the spirit exactly of what a triager would be. Is they can take exactly that first pass review and they can say, yeah, this looks good, but then exactly a maintainer would actually need to go and actually give the final all clear. So that is very much the spirit of triager, which, by the way, is a word I am absolutely not in love with. So if anyone has a better name than triager, perhaps trusted reviewer, that would be great. Can we move to the next point?
Yeah, I think I was gonna say, I think the next step for that would be to submit it to the TAC and kind of see if they run with it, and if not, then kind of looking at it with a scorecard specific lens makes sense to me.
Yeah, can do. Cool. The next step is the next thing that we would like to talk about is the scorecard score viewer that Clo Monitor is suggesting, is like saying they'd be willing to donate to scorecard, so they get used to that. And like that is something that we would really like to see happen. And let's put it this way, the sooner the better, in terms that the sooner it gets done, the fewer badges we then need to modify to point to the correct URL. So I mean, like, as everyone says in the comments, like it's a really nifty tool. And so being able to get that legibility instead of the current JSON dump that you get from the badge would be really nice. And the sooner we get that, the quicker that we and the Ghost upstream team can submit a bunch of PRs helping projects have cleaner badges.
I think we're just waiting on the CLO monitor folks to send a PR at this point.
Okay, looks perfect. That's really happy to hear. And now I think Joe is going to just talk about some issues that we've had that we'd like to point out.
Yeah. So as
One quick question I had, like, if the people working on the monitor, if we're just waiting for them to send a PR, is it clear that they have the green light to do so, or are they still waiting for any sort of confirmation from us? Just want to make sure that it's not lost on their side, that they know that we're ready to accept it.
I believe I left an itch or a comment saying go ahead. But I can confirm or ping.
So yeah, can I move on to the next point?
Yeah. Also, I just got a text. I need to go do a kid pickup. So could someone pick up facilitating for the last little bit?
Yeah, I can help facilitate.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, let's do the priority issues.
Okay, yeah. So as Pedro said, our team, the Ghost upstream team, works directly with some maintenance, recommending scorecards and security enhancements. And we have lots of feedbacks and contacts with some flaws of scorecard. And we, for the next month quarter maybe, we are looking forward to contribute more to Scorecard to help the tool enhance and be better to the maintainers as well. So we have came up with a list of issues that we want to contribute with, and that we believe they might be priority to improve the satisfaction of the maintainers in general. So please feel free to take a look and give any tweaks or opinions on the list. I brought up the first three of them. First one is actually the topic that Hagav have brought up at the beginning of the meeting, so it was already covered. The second one, just open my laptop here because I can't see on the screen. Yeah, the next one, with the token permission check, recently there was a PR that made the job level write permissions, write content permission, not decrease the score of a project. But it didn't change the score decrease for low risk permissions. So currently the high risk job level permissions are not being punished, but the low risk permissions in job level are being punished. So this is a issue that describes that, and this should be our priority to solve. The second one that I am already assigned to work on is to allow unpinned dependencies while the action is called only with read permissions. I will bring up in the discussion in the issue about whether not punishing at all or decreasing a very low point. For example, if there is a action being called with not hash pinned, not an action not hash pinned, but called with read permission, if we can on the pin dependencies check decrease the score for I don't know, half a point or 0.1, I don't know, or just not decrease at all. I will bring up this discussion, but I think this should be straightforward to. There was a lot of noise from the maintainers, not noise, but like disagreement of having low points in pin dependencies when having hash pinned on action that have only read permissions doesn't increase much of the security. So that's also an important point. Yeah, that's all. I just wanted to bring this list and make sure guys can follow up with that.
Quick question. I remember there was some maintainers who also who didn't see the value of Scorecard beyond just fixing the things, and they were asking for PR support in the action. I was just wondering if this is still something that you've found, or do you think it's not something we need to prioritize?
Yeah, many maintainers are really interested in PR support because they don't see much value on just being notified about the score decrease after the PR was merged. So they are really interested in that. It is also in our priority issues, but we choose to prioritize the ones that are affecting their scores, and they are really upset about it.
Yeah.
So this is something they are interested, but not really upset.
So yeah, I mean, from the Ghost Upstream team, I believe that's all we had to really say. So thank you for your time. I think we can move on to the next.
Actually, can I make like just one more point, Pedro? Would it be useful, like, if we raise some PRs, like, to solve some of these issues, if we bring it here to discuss first, or like discuss after we create a PR? So we can have like a review or discuss some points during the meeting.
Yeah, like for example, for the token permissions one, it's still like maybe like which so yeah, like not penalizing. I think the problem is like accurately defined, but maybe like there's like complexity in how we would like go about scoring it. Like as you mentioned in the bug, like just like a flat score depending on whether permissions are like too broadly scoped at the workflow level or like narrowly scoped at the job level. Yeah, maybe that it just like needs like an opinionated implementation or something. Also, I feel like we're pretty flexible with like scoring, and we can like adjust more over time. But yeah, maybe it just like needs more like opinions or something, or like more like just like a opinionated stance on why like one of those is superior and like why, and it should just like be in the issue, and it's like gets like a thumbs up, and then it can be implemented. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So we'll describe well in the issues and bring it here to make sure if it does not like receive a thumbs up, that like you're taking a look at it, so we can discuss with all of you if that's like okay to implement, or if we should do some fixes in the idea. Cool.
Like my personal opinion is that it should work kind of like as long as permission is at a job level, like, and it's the right permission. It just seems like not as bad, because people will need right permissions in jobs, but we should just like discourage top level right permissions. So like just a leveled score makes sense to me, which I think is like the second option that you've described. Something, yeah. Okay. Or sorry, the third, yeah.
I have a quick question on the second, on the pin dependencies. So unprivileged workflows. So basically, I guess the only contentious issue there is like pull request. So if you get a pull request from a remote repo, then it's read by default, so you're safe. But sometimes pull requests also can come from internal contributors and doing it on like a local branch on the same repo. So are we going to force people to also, are we going to consider a pull request safe only if the top permissions are read-only or something like that?
Exactly, yeah. As far as I know, there's no way to distinguish if like a project forbids branches or branch PRs. Therefore, yeah, like pull requests will need to have permissions, right? Permissions read, yeah, top level.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And they also naturally can't have secrets either, because contents read, but with secrets also wouldn't be safe. So it'd have to be contents read, and the job can't have secrets. Otherwise, they could hijack the dependency and use a dependency to exfiltrate secrets.
Anything else on priority issues? Justin, do you want to talk about SBOMs?
So Lucas did some research on detecting SBOM creation through reading through GitHub Actions. It appears as though it's pretty unambiguous to determine if GitHub Actions are being generated in that way, though certainly that's not the only way that SBOMs can be generated. So there's a fairly straightforward way to ensure, to detect whether or not SBOMs are being created, which is one of the two proposed criteria that we judge this SBOM section on. The second one is the quality of those SBOMs, which requires us to be able to find out where they ended up. There's not exactly a one-to-one mapping for detecting whether or not an SBOM was generated and then being able to find the location it was generated to. There are still two outstanding issues. We need to meet with the two SBOM groups within OpenSSF, which I think we're planning to do next week sometime. But at that point, we should have relevant research done. And I guess my question would be, what else should I be doing?
So I guess I might be repeating what we said at the previous meeting. I was wondering, how do we figure out if the project is a library and therefore has, if the project is an application and therefore needs an SBOM? Because I think, as we said before, like libraries do not need an SBOM.
I did not say that. I think all things need the SBOM.
Yeah, so I think we need to work with the working group, because I don't think libraries need an SBOM. They don't have dependencies that are resolved, and so there is no SBOM to.
In some languages, the libraries don't have resolved dependencies, but that's not true of all.
And so do you have some examples? Because by definition, libraries should let the end user application resolve. Otherwise, you have, resolve conflicts across different libraries that are saying, I want you to use version X at
One
the commit.
example would be NPM, which takes a duplicate everything approach.
But
so
NPM also has a package.json. It's just a range of versions. It's not pinned to a version, so there isn't. Like, I don't understand how the SBOM is going to look like if you say, I rely on package X, range v1 to v1.6. Like, how is that a useful SBOM? Is that actually an SBOM?
not all libraries specify a version range like that. Like in the Java program, like in the Java SDK for Open Feature, I have very specific pinned versions for my dependencies.
Okay, so that would be the use case. But then it's like, my worry is that we're going to ask, let's say there's 10% of libraries that do this. How do we, like, for libraries that don't do this, are we expecting an empty SBOM, or an SBOM that says I don't have any? Is there a concept of empty SBOM, I guess?
And an SBOM that's empty would be syntactically valid.
Okay, so I guess that's what we would be asking.
Can you give me some examples of libraries that you think shouldn't have, like a couple, like 1 or 2 specific examples, maybe in 2 different languages, so that I can go look?
I guess any NPM package that has, which is a library and has a package.json but not a package lock.json, is basically a library. I guess is what I mean.
I think you do see the same phenomenon against Python and even Java to some extent, where the actual determination of what version is picked is dependent on all the other dependencies in the project, and then package manager makes the best choice of what version to pick, based on the specified versions. I think there might be some opportunity to like take this to the Cyclone DX working group and perhaps SPDX and see if there's maybe a different specification for library bombs where you could have that version range specified. Because I do think there's value to having a library SBOM, but I fully get the point that does not specify the exact version, which is very important from a vulnerability perspective, especially.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Express.js, which is a library that has a package JSON. It does not have a package lock JSON. And they have very specific versions as well as ambiguous versions.
Yeah, it'd be pretty useful to understand this, because I'd like to have an answer to this, because otherwise it's unclear that we're asking people to do work that they don't need to do. Also, another question that I have is, I'm actually at a broad question is are the GitHub release assets the right way to ask people to put their SBOM or not? Because a lot of projects upload they publish to, say, the NPM registry, and it looks like a better place to have an SBOM is over there, because that's where you download your application from. So that's where also NPM has the SALSA attestation today. And so if there were any kind of SBOM, would it be more, like, would it make more sense to have it on the registries rather than on the Git, on the repository? I guess my argument is more like, my gut feeling is that even for applications, a lot of people do not consume application from a GitHub project. They consume it through like an OS distribution binary, and it looks like maybe those places are where SBOM should be distributed instead of like on GitHub. I'm not sure, like, consumption-wise, whether it makes sense to have it on the repo or not. And I guess I would love to have the working group at OpenSSF kind of make this clearer, because otherwise it's not going to be useful for consumption, and so it's additional work for maintainers, and it's not actually useful for consumers, and so it's really unclear whether the repository is the right place to put the SBOM in practice. So I don't know if you have an answer to this, but I think it'd be useful
I think that there's a difference between the GitHub repository, the Git repository, which I do not think should have the SBOM, versus GitHub's release notion. When you make a GitHub release, I do think that should have the SBOM for that release. But I will take that to the working group and ask them if they have guidance. There's nothing to say that so in one of the libraries that I maintain, I upload my SBOM to Maven, and I do not put it in GitHub releases, because I think that makes sense. Right. And there's nothing to say that we couldn't add support for Maven targets later. But
Yeah,
I,
yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think that the bar to entry can be go implement it for every package repository, for every package management solution.
Yeah, but I guess it's still something that OpenSSF should kind of see what to prioritize, because if the consumption happens at you know, Debian is recompiling everything. They have the SBOM for everything. Container images know what they're compiling. They can generate an SBOM. And package managers are the entry point also where we download. So if we want to be there in 2 years from now, like, I think the OpenSSF should take a call to say that we're going to spend and prioritize those avenues rather than saying, put it in your GitHub release assets, which I'm not saying is bad per se, but it's not going to have the impact that we could have if we
did 30 times more work.
If we what?
If we did 30 times more work.
No, if we actually prioritize instead of just saying let's ask everyone to write an SBOM, which nobody is going to do, and who is going to consume it? I guess the consumption problem is my question. Is like today on Salsa, we ask people to put the Salsa attestation in the GitHub release. How many people actually download from the GitHub release a binary and actually verify it, compared to how many download something from apt-get and the npm package. So like what npm has, where they have the attestation next to the package, there's a strong like.
I don't think people will go download something from apt and then also look at its SBOM to validate it. Like there's a whole line of tooling that will need to be built to facilitate that. And I'm not saying that we put a stake in the ground and say GitHub releases are the only way that you can ever put out an SBOM. I'm just saying that there's prior art. People do that today. Like that's an easy place to start. And if we want to go through and do more with the package managers themselves, I think that's a very fine thing to do. I have no problems with that. I just we will always want more, but that can't be the entry point. So what's the reasonable entry point is the question that I have. But I will go to the two working groups, just to be clear. Those are the SBOM Everywhere group and the repositories group. And I will ask them, do we recommend that libraries have SBOMs? What do we do about unresolved dependencies? And is GitHub releases the correct place to look for SBOMs, or should it be in the package repositories, or both? And I assume the answer is both. I think the question to this working group would then be, can we start with GitHub releases and do the other one later?
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
The
I don't know if
thing
anyone else has more.
in the packaging check, I believe we have some kind of or sorry, no, maybe not packaging. I'm trying to recall. We do some kind of like ecosystem specific checks, or like we can navigate to package repositories across like multiple ecosystems. I think this is just when you're specifying the project that you want to scan as like in the CLI. So maybe there's like you can like implement one SBOM source and then leave it open in the architecture to like add other places to search for SBOMs or something in the way that the check is designed. So that you can just like plug different like URLs or something, or like search methods. Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions that I should go ask the working group, the two working groups? And then my follow-on question is, if I get answers from the working group that are clear and I address them, what's the next blocker? What's the next thing we'll want?
I guess we can discuss scoring and stuff, but I think that's already on the issue, so I don't anticipate more
Cool.
more blockers. I don't know if anyone has other questions. Please chime in. Yeah, it looks like it's fine.
Thanks, Cal.
Yeah, thanks again for doing all that work. I didn't mean to like.
No, I appreciate the direct answer to what do I need to do, because now I can go do it. And now I'll come back in a couple of weeks and we can move on. Then you can go complain about my code and how terrible it is. No, appreciate it.
Any other agenda items from anyone else? Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. We need a facilitator for next week. Next week, we'll be meeting on 2 weeks from now, the 15th of June. There will be a sync. Yeah.
I can facilitate, Argov.
Cool. Thanks, Spencer. Okay. Thank you, everyone.